Hey watercolor wizards, Hajra here. Today, I'll be taking individual watercolor pans and reorganizing them into smaller travel-type watercolor tins, making them more convenient and usable. Sometimes, just like furniture, moving art supplies you already have into a new, more efficient location makes them more usable. As usual, video notes, project sketches, art blogs, deconstructed painting posts, and more rewards are available for my patrons on Patreon. So I've taken several of my Schmincke pans, and they are the colors you can get if you buy one variation of the Schmincke Travel Watercolor set, and I happen to have these pans bought separately over several years, so now I've just arranged them in my own DIY Schmincke Travel Watercolor tin. And I've managed to fit in a few extra half pan colors since I had the room in the tin. I've also arranged my own DIY Sennelier Travel Watercolor tin the same way, using several loose Sennelier pans I had. I've used pretty empty mint tins for both of these sets, and it makes them compact, more adorable, and at least for me, more usable. And it's important to find what works for you. I discovered that when I put bits of my Aqua Sticks and Neocolor 2s into travel tins some years ago, I used them a whole lot more. And it's the same for my Sennelier Aqua mini set. It came in a convenient, compact format, and I use it all the time. Even if I'm just traveling to my desk, I find I reach for these small tin sets of colors much more. So I finally got around to doing that for some of my loose pans for Schmincke and Sennelier. They've been neglected for a while, and hopefully this can change that. And I'm going to do color swatches of my two yummy DIY travel watercolor kits in this video, and you'll be able to see what a robust small set of watercolor consists of in both these brands. Some of the extras I added to the Sennelier tin are a few Winsor & Newton pans I bought to try out new colors. The colors I added gave me a larger range of reds, and so this tin might be a good pick for future botanical paintings with lots of rosy flowers and blooms. I did find the Winsor & Newton pans to be much harder in consistency and lower quality than either the Sennelier or Schmincke. All three brands use gum arabic, but Sennelier uses honey and Schmincke uses ox gall and higher quality pigments, and I think this is why the Sennelier and Schmincke pans are much softer and easier to use with nice dense pigment loads. Once I use up the few Winsor & Newton pans I have, I definitely won't be buying more. Buying a small amount, if you can, from an art brand is the least wasteful way to test to see if you like a brand or product, or maybe ask a friend if they have something that you're wanting to try, if you can just sample it a little bit. Sometimes testing a product results in finding a product you love, but other times you'll just pay to find out that it doesn't work for you. I'm an opulent minimalist, or a creative minimalist, which sounds less like an oxymoron. These are both terms I came up with to describe how I've lived happily most of my life. It means that I've never gotten loads of things, but when I do get things, I choose them carefully based on several factors. I strive for efficiency, utility, quality, uniqueness, and artistic beauty, which can be hard to find altogether, but I prefer a beautiful, useful object over an ugly or cheap useful one, or a pretty useless one. Having few things, and those things being both useful and pretty when possible, makes me happy. And I'm not saying it has to be your way, but it works for me. So when it comes to art supplies, I buy the best quality art supplies I can afford, because cheap supplies I've found are often false economy. And I only keep what I can easily store and will use, and that includes getting rid of things that you might have bought and spent money on, but you don't like as much, so you shouldn't just hold on to them because you spent money on them. If you're not going to use them, then you should get rid of them. Too many things are wasteful and also inefficient. You can't use or master what you can't find. Promised myself years ago that I would never have so many art supplies at one time that I couldn't fit them in my little Tabaret art cabinet. And I've been able to stick to that without any problems, really, except for this year. I've been really anxious about art product clutter slowly creeping up on me for more than 2 years as a result of being asked to review various things. And it wasn't like a horrible, countless number of things like crushing me. It was just several more things, which may not be everyone's idea of too many things, and you might think it's silly that it gave me stress, but it's surprising how much room these things took up in my little art Tabaret, and how cluttered and hard to find and use they made everything. But thank God, I've purged the extras and giveaways and library and school donations throughout this year to try and stamp out the clutter creepers weeding out, and now I should be able to get back to using what I like best. And yeah, I'm partly glad I tested out several new cheaper art products this year, if only to confirm my earlier choices were better. I do wish I had saved my money on some of those experiments rather than agree to review them. It was a good lesson to learn firsthand in the past year or so, and like so many lessons, you really have to experience it yourself before you really appreciate it. I would urge anyone wanting to buy and test out new products firsthand to get a sample size or an individual color pan or bottle instead of a whole set if you can. And now I'm happy to come back home fully to my creative minimalism and just use my Arches paper, Schmincke and Sennelier watercolors, and Cretacolor gouache. This came up in my YouTube comment section 2 weeks ago, and also on Instagram and Patreon sometime later. And funny thing is, I'd been getting rid of the last of my extra supplies and preparing to share this creative minimalism video for a while now, because it's silly that I missed using my favorite paints and paper this year, and I shouldn't have had to when they had been sitting there the whole time. Post donations and giveaways. My art cabinet is looking a lot roomier, and the stuff I like is a lot easier to see. And I will need to use up some remaining watercolor journal paper before I can return fully to Arches, but that's not such a big deal as I get good results using gouache and ink on those other papers. And my less stifling cabinet space inspired me to arrange the 2 yummy travel tins I shared with you in this video. So you can see that I painted my color swatches in each set loosely on a color wheel to easily spot complements and analogous pairs and so on. And my earth colors and neutrals are off to one side so they don't muddy up, literally, my color wheel of primary and secondary hues. Well, wizards, I hope I imparted some useful information about creative minimalism somehow, and thanks for parking your brushes here. Please like, subscribe, and check out my website links and Patreon page to support my art and art channel below. Until next time, wishing you all epic art adventures.